Welcome to the Atlantic Dialogues Television. L'ambassadeur Microix, bienvenue. We'll do this in English for our very, very large international audience.
Good.
Talk about the problems of the world.
Yeah.
Let me ask you the first question. We have problems in Europe, Brexit. We have problems, racism. We have a war in Yemen. We have a transatlantic, trans-Pacific violence with China and trade. If you look at the world, are you optimistic of what we are looking into?
If you look at the world as it is on the spot, you can be pessimistic. But at the end of the day, I'm an optimistic man, and I think that we will overcome those problems with some leadership, decision making. In Europe, in the West, it's mainly democracies, that people have to take decisions anyway. Are they going to be re-elected, not re-elected? It's not the problem. There are some decisions to be taken. You need a strong leadership, real decisions, and courageous decisions. And no, doesn't matter if you win the next elections or you don't, you have to take the decisions right now.
That is a wonderful, wonderful theory. You said leadership and courage and not bothering about winning your election or not. If we look at Mr. Trump, do you think he doesn't bother about his re-election in 2020?
I think that Mr. Trump has his own thinking, he has his own ideas, and I think that he's implementing what he believes to be the right way to manage things from where he is as President of the United States. So he has his own beliefs, and he believes in the way he's managing them, and this is where he is. And you can agree or disagree, but you cannot. He's acting as he believes be better acting.
But how can you find a common ground, let's say the Europeans with the United States on trade issues, common ground on NATO, common ground on the anti-Russian positions or not Russian positions, and we don't even want to go into deep China. How can you find a common ground with all these different actors today? What would you propose?
Well, I would say that it's a matter of negotiations. It's a matter of looking together at what is best for the world, and this is why I was talking about courage. What is best for the world, and try to find a common ground, to work together to find the better way of doing things. And I'm sure that we can always reach a common ground. Of course there are different positions. Of course the Europeans have different positions. Of course inside the European Union there are different positions. Of course there are different interests between United States and Europeans, and different interests between the United States and Russia. But there are always common grounds, and this is why the world has been living in peace for the last 55 years.
You said the best.
65 years.
But you said the best for the world.
70 years.
Mr. Trump's policy is America first. If you come into this world of populists, which we have in Europe, you have in Italy, you have in Poland, you have in Hungary, you have in Germany, you have it in the United States, and you have it with the Brexit in many ways in the United Kingdom. Aren't these countries all turning inward, and aren't these countries all doubting the treaties, doubting the international organizations, the WTO, NATO? Don't you think there is a kind of pessimism in the world today?
You have to understand, you have to make an analysis about why we find this populism, why these people have been elected, why you have that trend. And the reason is how people feel It's the perception of the people, how they feel about their own lives, how they feel about their future. And obviously, this populism that you find all around the Western world, mainly the Western world, is coming, is some people are scared about their future, they're not feeling well about, they don't see their future being better than their past or their present. They saw that the way that it was managed before didn't give them what they were expecting for, and they are trying something else, and probably there are some real reasons for these people to vote the way they vote, and you have the leadership and the governments have to address the problems of these people. But let me tell you something. A lot of people talk about globalization, and globalization being the problem, mainly in the Western world. Well, globalization has been, as everybody said here, has been a very good thing globally for humanity. Hundreds of millions of people came out of poverty thanks to globalization. In countries like the United States, that allowed people to keep their standard of living by being able to purchase goods for a lower price because of globalization. The problem is not really coming from globalization. I think that the problem is coming from technology, the evolution of technology. I was in a think tank, I was in a conference last year in Washington, and a very well-known ex-USTR, a US trade representative, said that between 1992 and today, the industry of America grew by 82%.
Amazing figure, yes.
But the number of jobs created in the same, between 1992 and 2017 grew by 20%. So you have a big problem of technology and how we are going to address the questions of technology. A friend of mine, big company, told me that they invested 3 billion euros. They created exactly 72 jobs.
That's the problem.
It's a big problem.
If you then talk about artificial intelligence and robots replacing the assembly line workers, the bus drivers, the train drivers.
Yeah, and that with me, and this is going to happen. So I spoke with a friend in China, where I am today, and he's one of the CEO of a big company of artificial intelligence. And I told him, what governments are going to do with this? And he told me we will have to find a way, because there is no way that we're going to avoid development of artificial intelligence. So that's one of the problems, and we have to find a way. How many days people will work? Are they going to work?
Whether they find work.
Whether they find work. So, you know, we have lots of ideas. Among the ideas you have the universal revenue. So people have at least something to live with. So it's a big problem, and nobody addressed really this problem. And so people have to think really about it.
But I think you're still such a wonderful diplomat of finding the right solutions for everybody. But can democracy, as we have seen democracy work in England now at the moment with the Brexit negotiations and House of Commons, how do you say, almost revolutionized, can democracy, or is it strong enough to face the problems you just mentioned? To face the problems as a democracy which does function already very, very, very difficult.
The problem is, it was said here, the problem with democracy is that we are beyond democracy, the traditional democracy, the traditional representative democracy. People today, I mean, before people elected members of parliament who would think and debate about issues and try to find a solution.
Read newspapers and books.
You read newspapers and books, and today people are asking for answers right away, immediately. That is not possible. So we have to cope with that and to find a way to work that, and democracy have to reinvent themselves. But it's going to be very difficult, and one of the problems is the internet and the social media, where people can. We've seen that in France recently. You can create a movement in no time, thanks to
and nobody controls the movement.
And nobody controls, and nobody represents the movement.
That's right.
And that's a big problem. So how our democracies, or traditional representative democracies, will evolve? That's again a question, and nobody, for the time being, nobody figured out how it's going to work. Today you have your people elect somebody, and the day after they regret to.
Yeah, but it's almost like Trump is signing a contract tomorrow, and you don't know whether the contract is still valid in a year from now, or the treaty.
Well, I don't know.
He didn't sign
the contract yet. No. He did actually.
But the Iran treaty,
he didn't sign it.
No, I'm just saying he just ripped it up, and and other treaties like NAFTA and everything else, he ripped up. So there's no trust in politicians anymore, I believe. There's no confidence in politicians, and as you just mentioned right now, is on the issue of internet. The internet in the United States is hardly controlled. You know, there is no control. It's almost anarchy. In Europe, there is some control. They
very
try,
little.
yeah, but they try. It's very difficult. In China, there is more and a different control. So we already have 3 different kinds of internet developments. So there's no harmony on the internet field either, and I don't think there ever will be, as long as Facebook is Facebook with 2 billion clients and so on. So what is, we will not find the answer, but what could be the solution? The democracies are weak. Referendums don't work, as we have seen with Brexit, because the people vote by emotions and feelings and frustrations and not by a thoughtful process. Yeah. So what is the discussion? There's no discussion in the United States Congress about democratic changes, democratic adaptations. There's none in France. If there's a violent demonstration, as they had, they just raise the minimum salary by $100 or whatever. That's not policy, that's just emergency. That's an emergency kit. So what is the solution? I mean, if you had the solution, you would be in government by now, but...
I'm not in government. I think that it's a real question, and people have to think about it and see how, because this evolution happened in no time, in very few years. The way things were managed 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, changed totally. So nobody knows exactly how this is going to evolve. You have the Western democracies, but you have some other experiences, and by the way, Western democracies are different if you are in America, if you are in France, or if you are in Germany, or if you are in Italy. It's a different ways of having a democracy. Political systems are different in.
Look at Africa. If you look
at Africa, but look at India, but look at also the Chinese system. There is a TED talk, a very interesting TED talk about. I think it was the tale of 2 systems. So it was the American democracy towards the Chinese system, which is a kind of meritocracy.
Yes.
So it's quite interesting to see. Then you have the Singapore, as was said here yesterday, the Singapore model. But you have others. You have other models, and probably little by little, countries will find their own way of government. But the problem today is that people are waiting and expecting, have expectations, and governments have to address those expectations. It's very difficult, it's not easy. The room of maneuver for governments is very narrow, it's very thin. Before the I'm going to be kind of cynical, but the representative democracy was about you vote for me and I'll give you back something. Governments do not have the means anymore to give back anything.
It's very true, and it's like you look at syndication, like this, the labor unions.
Yeah.
They don't have any money anymore, so
They
they
don't
don't have
have-
any power anymore.
Exactly. If when the government, we were talking about France. France has 100% of debt on GDP. That's very high.
And very dangerous.
It's high. It's high, but you have the other countries that are in the same situation. So it's very difficult to give back that the government does anything, who has the means to do anything, and especially to answer the expectations of people, sometimes in real difficult positions. It's very difficult, especially in the Western world, where people have had a very good life, a very, very good life in the last 70 years. A life, better life, better life than their parents, or much better life than their grandparents. And today they are worried about their own future life and the future of their children.
And pensions.
And pensions. And all this is a big problem. So how are you going to solve the problem? Nobody knows yet. Probably we were talking about the problems of technology, that probably technology will bring something, and the technology that we will have in 5 years, nobody knows what it will be, and maybe we will find solutions.
But isn't time running out? I mean, that's one of the last questions now, but isn't time running out? If something like what happened in Paris with the yellow movement, if that happens anywhere else in the world, how do you control it? And can't it turn very quickly into something very violent and something very unwanted? I'm not talking about civil war, but I'm talking about the breakdown of government and the breakdown of parliament.
I don't believe that this will happen, because at the end of the
Because
day, the
you're an
violence.
optimist. You're
Yes,
an
yes, but you have look at the violence that happened in France. It was not it was not done by the majority of the yellow or
Yes.
the gilets jaunes.
Right.
It was made by a few groups, violent groups that went there for fun and just disrupted the whole thing. So I think that can be controlled, and globally, people, what they want at the end of the day is security and safety and stability. So when they will see that there is a danger of disruptions, instability, and safety for people, they will react.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I hope you enjoy Marrakesh
Thank you.
and have a nice travel back home to the
Thank
new
you.
home.
Thank you.
Thank you.